Hi folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. So today I want to talk about something that I have been just hammering away at for quite some time, and I know that some of you may be getting tired of it. I've been getting more and more comments that, oh, this is just clickbait. Oh, you're just trying to hype it up. Oh, this is just fear tactics. It's not, folks. I think that this subject is quite possibly the most dangerous and threatening thing happening to us physically in the immediate than any of the other stuff that we have to worry about. And that is the very real potential of skyrocketing food prices, and very possible, as it's becoming more and more possible and more likely, of food shortages, to the point that it's going to be very critical for many. And so I want to cover some things. Some of this is a little bit of revisiting previous things, but I'm bringing you some new content. And like I try to do on here from time to time, is after I've talked about different things that are related, I try to kind of put it all together. And that's where we're going to go with this video today. In some ways, I get it. It's tiresome sometimes. And I'm not on here. I don't want to scare anyone. I don't want anyone to just, go into this panic and this, fear takeover, or to run out and spend all the money you have all at once, or whatever it is. That's not the intent at all. I'm doing this because as I'm seeing this stuff happening, and based on what I know in history, based on my own personal experiences, based on certain training that I have received, when I've done previous work, and then just the stuff that, some of you tell me and what I read on my own, you start to put it all together, and it's not painting a good picture, folks. I think that we as a nation are headed down a very scary path that we have never ever experienced before when it comes to the not enough food. Just not enough food. That's one thing. That's one thing we've always had. Even during the Depression, there were certainly certain areas, especially during the Dust Bowl, that they struggled with food. But in the end, we really had enough. A lot of it had to do with being able to move food around, or having enough money to purchase food. But there was food, okay? Now things are different. I mean, there's certainly going to be inflation, and that's going to affect it, and so the ability to purchase food is certainly part of the problem. But the actual real problem of maybe not even having enough food, and not enough stuff, not just food, just things to live by, to keep everything in motion, because everything is so interconnected, especially on a global stage, that even though we might say, well, we have enough, we can produce enough corn, except maybe there's one component to certain particular machinery in harvesting that corn that, is in great short supply, let's just say. And then it throws a big old wrench into that whole, system of going out there and harvesting corn. So it creates a shortage, and you might say, well, there's plenty of corn, the corn crop's great this year. Yes, but this one particular part or component in the harvesting process is in great short supply for some reason. Let's just say, something that comes from China or whatever. And so while there's fields filled with corn, there's no way to harvest it. That's the kind of world that we live in. It's not like it was 100 years ago, where things were kind of done by hand, and as long as they could get the product to grow, they could harvest it, and it was diversified and across the nation. Now, if one thing happens, it's just like the whole house of cards comes crashing down. And so that's what we're starting to see. And I just want to strongly encourage everyone to be pretty serious about this, and to really buckle down. This weekend should be a very happy weekend for many of you of different faiths, whether it's Passover or Resurrection Sunday or whatever you celebrate. So I don't want to take away from that, but this is a pretty serious thing. So let's just kind of get into it. So this China port stuff, that's what I talked about yesterday, and that was a really seemed to be a very popular video. I really think this is a really critical situation. And I do believe that they're doing it on purpose. But honestly, at this point, it doesn't really matter why it's happening. The why we're past that. The fact is it's happening, and it's going to greatly affect us. Let's go back a year ago or so, when China went through a little bit of a lockdown. Many of you remember it in the news, and it was part, not the only reason, but it was part of what caused a lot of the shipping container congestion here, the port congestion here. Not the only reason, but it was a big part of it, okay? And part of that is because they had a little bit of a spike over there, and it wasn't that much. I think, if I remember reading correctly, it was only a few dozen cases or something. And so they went through a short little kind of shutdown of one of their ports, and it caused enough of a backlog of containers that it was a big part of the problem here in the United States. Now, to put this into perspective, that little shutdown that they did was at only one terminal at one port. So they didn't shut the whole port down. They shut down one terminal down to 30% capacity. So it wasn't even completely shut down. It was brought down to 30% capacity at one terminal at one port, and it wasn't even their big port. It was just one of their regular ports. Okay, so try to put that in perspective. It was one terminal brought down to 30% capacity at one of the regular average ports. And it caused such a shipping container backlog that it greatly contributed to the port congestions and stuff that we've felt over the last year or so here in the United States. So take that little nugget of information and now look at the fact that the entire ports of Shanghai, the entire ports, which is the largest shipping port, container port, or container shipping port in the entire world. It's the biggest. There's nothing to compare to it. Is almost completely shut down, the entire port. Along with that, there are several other cities around in that area that are also shut down. So vastly more, shut down than what happened a year ago. Their truck drivers, 9 out of 10 truck drivers in and around that area and that port and pretty much across the country are completely shut down. Their restrictions are so great on the truck drivers right now because of this lockdown. They're almost non-existent in their job. They have to be tested every 24 hours. They have to apply for a special permit to transfer goods every 24 hours. It only lasts for 24 hours. So every 24 hours, they have to apply, take a test, a thing up their nose test, test, to get a permit that only lasts 24 hours so that they can move goods and stuff in their truck. And the backlog is about a 40 to 48 hours. So it's taking them 2 days to get a permit that only lasts 24 hours. It's absolutely insane. The warehouses and the ports all around that area and the manufacturing is almost completely stopped. I mean, there's almost none being done. And several other cities in that region that are very large manufacturing cities, technological manufacturing, doing tech company stuff, parts, machinery manufacturing, all that. The vast majority of them are either slowed down greatly or completely shut down. Air travel, cargo air, has been restricted very greatly. There's a little bit of it happening, but not enough to make any difference. All that is happening, along with the many, many other things that are happening across the world that are affecting the supply chain, affecting food. This is going to affect us, folks. This is going to affect us in a way that I don't know that I can even kind of imagine, because we know how it affected us before. We know what this stuff has done in the past year or two. And this is like many magnitude greater of a shutdown and lack of movement of goods and stuff. And we're dealing with a much more fragile system, a system that's still here in the United States. We're still not over all the shipping container port congestion here in the United States. It's maybe slightly gotten better, but there's been reports that it's not gotten better in California. They've just spread it out amongst other ports, and now there's more ports that are congested. And this is happening. I have a real concern here that here in a month or two, the amount of havoc that's going to play on our entire supply chain, it's going to be catastrophic. And it's not, I know we're talking about food a lot, and you might say, well, a lot of this may not be food. It may not be. Not all of it. But what a lot of it is tech stuff and parts. A lot of that will be used in either the harvesting or the manufacturing production of food. So that's going to, and then there's just all the other stuff that comes from China, and that many of you are like, good, we don't need it. Well, that may be true, or we shouldn't have it. But the fact is if it gets cut off, it's going to be a serious problem. It's going to affect our economy. It's not going to be good. And then there's just other things that are going on. It's being reported, and I don't fully, I'm not a train guy. I'll admit that. I'm not a train guy. I think they're cool, but I don't know a whole lot about the whole logistics of how it all functions. But it's being reported in a group of, within the rail industry is trying to push back against some very recent changes coming down from the federal government on how the cargo freight trains do switching of cars or moving them around, and maybe someone that may know what's going on can jump in. I read about it, but I still don't fully understand it. But the point is that they're changing the regulations. All of a sudden, they're changing the regulations on how freight trains move around and load and unload and switch cars and things like that. And the rail industry says this is going to be havoc. Like, this is going to greatly slow down freight trains and just the logistics and the moving around of goods. We've got to stop this. But the federal government is saying, no, this is the new rules. This is how you do it. So here's one more big old dent in the system, right? I mean, we're watching this dam that's just crumbling and falling apart, and there's just every time it's a bigger and bigger chunk coming out of it, until all of a sudden that crumbling wall, that dam cannot hold that flood back. And that's what it feels like is happening. We have the stuff at the Mexican border with the Mexican truckers, blockading the border. And a lot of that's due to the new inspections on truckers, imposed upon truckers and everything. But the point is there's a strong potential. There's $150 million in produce that may not make it, and there's an uncertain of how much has been damaged and spoiled because of the length of time that they've been sitting there and not getting delivered. That is going to affect things, okay? It may not be as big as the China ports being shut down, but it's still another pretty significant kink in the armor, a big chunk of the dam that's happening. And this is all on top of the war in Ukraine and Russia, with the wheat supply, the fertilizer supply, the drought, the 1,200-year drought, all that kind of stuff, okay? What I'm talking about today is on top of all of that. Something with the overall supply chain, the General Services Administration. Some of you may not even know what that is. It's a government agency that basically oversees the maintenance of government buildings and government facilities. So, whatever the government building is, the people that's in charge of doing the maintenance on it and, building it and the supplying of the general operations, it comes under the head of the GSA, the Government Services Administration. And they are saying that they're very concerned because about 200,000 products that they regularly purchase and use just to maintain government, is becoming pretty hard to come by. It's very critical, and within the supply chain that they're not sure if they're going to be able to get this stuff. The projections are showing that it's either already difficult to get this stuff, or it could become even more difficult. And we're talking about stuff like security cameras and HVAC, air conditioners, furnaces, things like that, even down to certain hand tools, that they're concerned that because of various aspects within the supply chain that are being, hammered right now, whether it's the raw materials to produce things or just the movement, shipping problems, whatever it is. And so if this is their concern, then that must mean it's going to be the same way with you. That's one of the reasons why we're seeing a problem in the housing. It's not only just the fact that people can't afford a house right now, can't afford, the interest rates and stuff as they're going up, and inflation, is that housing has gone up greatly also because the stuff to build a house has gotten really expensive because it's in short supply in a lot of ways. I mean, there's certain things that they're just not able to get. And when they do, they have to pay a lot of money for it. This is all coming to a head. It's like a big festering boil, folks. Okay? You know, this what I've been talking about for weeks now, all this stuff, and I talk about how bad it could be. When I say that, that's based on the information that I know. It's not based on a what if more could happen. That's just based on what we know already. And so as more and more stuff happens, you know, when I was talking 2 weeks ago about how there could be shortages going on this fall, you know, this summer and fall, you know, I wasn't even really aware of how bad the whole Shanghai port in China was getting. But now that that's on top of all the problems, it's exacerbating the whole situation more. If we end up in a war with Russia and Ukraine, it's going to make things even worse. Our supply chain is very fragile. I've said this for years now, and now the mainstream media is finally coming out and letting people know we have a real fragile supply chain. And you can call it a coincidence if you want. I kind of don't believe in coincidences anymore, at least not in the last few years. Why there's so many things happening, you know, so many of these food processing plants are blowing up or getting burned to the ground, or even other processing plants for different things that would, you know, be in support of that, or distribution centers, big Walmart distribution centers, you know, getting burned to the ground and stuff. And it's just exacerbating the whole situation. We're seeing food shortages already, and we're seeing food rationing already. This article here talks about Costco, Walmart, Kroger. We've talked about Walgreens, and the other day they're you know, implementing rationing already. You know, baby formula is kind of the big one right now. Most people are rationing baby formula, but there's other stuff. A lot of these stores are rationing sugar. There's places rationing gas. You know, you can only purchase $50 or $100 in gasoline at a time. Some of these websites that are businesses that I mentioned on their online sites, you know, there's limits on yeast, limits on cleaning products, oil, cooking oils, tuna, mac and cheese. These are just some things that's mentioned in these articles that I've been reading of the restrictions. And let me point this out. The last time, a couple of years ago, when all the health crisis first started, and we started seeing people rush out and panic buy, and we started seeing, you know, the restrictions put on, you know, limits on what you could purchase because people were panic buying. Those limits were not because there wasn't enough stuff to go around. There was plenty of stuff. That was early on. The limits were put on because people were panic buying, okay? Well, no one's panic buying right now, but we're already starting to see limits put on, and the limits are because there just isn't enough stuff. Now, what happens when people wake up and they start to panic buy like they did 2 years ago, or even worse, and there isn't enough stuff to go around? The shelves that are kind of getting a little sparse right now in your area, and you're not always able to find exactly what you need, they're gonna look like, you know, communist Russia shelves. I mean, they're going to be absolutely bare because there just isn't enough in the supply chain to maintain it if there's any type of panic buying that will start. Folks, get ready, get your houses in order. I've been hearing a lot of rumors that these freeze-dried food companies are having a hard time, the emergency food companies. If that's something that you're wanting, you might be, you know, looking to getting it before they either, you know, can't produce as much anymore, or the prices go up. You can go to preparewithtravis.com and purchase it through My Patriot Supply. But certainly just get out there and stock up. I mean, that's the big thing, folks. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.